Why can't India control its local pollution and local environmental degradation? In fact, why are things getting worse every year? And they are getting worse every year. When I was young in the 1960s, our rivers were not as polluted as they are now. And the air in Delhi, when I was a student there in the late 1960s and early 1970s, in the winter, was certainly not as polluted as it is now and for the last few years. So things are getting worse. And we hear of problems in the hilly parts of Uttarakhand, which we never heard of when I was young. So things are getting worse. Why is this the case? What are we doing that's wrong? I will talk about two factors. This is certainly a very complicated issue, and we cannot just do it in a very short period of time. But there are two things that are easily understood and can be explained very soon, easily. So I will do that. First, we have to keep in mind that these issues are long term. Pollution doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen in 1 year. It's not like an earthquake suddenly and there's destruction. People know how to respond to that. But things that creep up on you happens over time. Politicians are really very bad at dealing with these issues, which are slowly happening over a long period of time. No event grabs their attention till it's too late. And then the problem is so complex that it's hard to find a simple solution. And more importantly, it's not possible to find a short term solution. As it happens in a democracy, most politicians are focused on the next election. And I say that as a correct feature of a democracy. You want to get re-elected. Every politician wants to get re-elected. Nobody wants to say, hey, I did the right thing. Thank God I did the right thing because I lost the election. No, that's not the way politics works. And I include all parties all over the world in this. Mostly, they want to win the re-election. And if they can do something in the short term that will help them get more votes, that's more like it. And it's certainly the case in India. So these environmental issues, degradation issues, loss of forest cover, loss of wildlife, these are not events. These are things that happen slowly. And politicians find it very hard to respond to these issues till somebody says, hey, it's too late. Now it's not a problem. So the cheetahs are gone. Okay, now we wake up. So import some cheetahs. Well, it didn't work out too well, did it? So these are problems that are very difficult for politicians to handle. Look at the air in Delhi. There's no politician who says, elect me and I'll give to you clean air. No one, not one politician promises that in Delhi because they don't know how long it will take to solve this problem. It's a complex problem. And what exactly does it mean in any case to have clean air? These are all difficult and messy issues. So we can't really expect our politicians. Now, perhaps there are some exceptions, but I'm not aware of those exceptions in India. Maybe somebody else is aware. So we run into a leadership issue. And what that means is that the people have to wake up and realize that it will take more than politicians to take care of our environment, to protect our environment. And here I want to bring the second factor, which is a mistake that economists have made. I just use the term protect the environment. But as an economist, I know that's not the right term. When we are talking about the environment, The environment doesn't exist or get degraded independently of people. It's all about people. It's all about two groups, one versus the other. In economics, we teach the concept of an externality. It's very easy. You play loud music at night and you disturb me. That's an externality. Your pleasure hurts me. Or if a street contractor who has to build a road puts on lights at night and machines are rumbling by making the road and disturbs everybody, that's the contractor's profit versus the harm that's done to people who are suffering that noise pollution and light pollution and the degradation of their environment. It's one group versus the other group. It's very important to keep in mind. It's about a conflict between two groups. And so also the local environment. It's a conflict between two groups. And basically, it's a conflict between consumers and the people who suffer the problems caused by environmental degradation. Now, the environment in India, if you're talking about rivers and the air, that degrades because we want to consume more. When I was young, India was a poor country. We didn't have the money, we didn't consume so much, and there were much fewer people. So the consumption levels were low. As our incomes increased and as our population increased, consumption levels began to rise. The total consumption levels began to rise. And consumption means there has to be some production. And if you are going to produce goods and services, there's going to be some waste associated with them. Even there could be transportation services. More people in taxis, more people in Ubers, more people on motorcycles, more people in their cars, and even more people in buses. If that amount of consumption rises, the production of that service will lead to waste. And it's industrial goods. Sure, there's output which is good and you want it, but there is waste that is dumped somewhere. Why? Because we never check where the producer has dumped the output. We want the low price. We don't want to go to the producer and say, hey, did you dump the stuff in the river or did in a pond or somewhere on a road when you made the stuff that I'm buying from you? We don't do that. We just take the low price and go home. So it's our consumption that leads to the production, that leads to the waste that is thrown in our water and in the air. So it is us. Now, my generation was given a cleaner environment than my generation has left to the young people's generation. Our consumption has made it more difficult and a problem for the younger people. They no longer have the clean air. They can no longer enjoy the clean rivers and the clean water in the rivers or any other activity they want to do. So it's my generation versus your generation. That's the conflict right there. It's an intergenerational conflict. What are we leaving for our grandchildren? Are they we leading a messy environment? And silently we ask ourselves, what have our grandchildren done for us? Maybe they make us smile and laugh, but in the end, we want our consumption. And as we want our consumption, we bequeath our younger generation a sullied environment. And they can fix it. They can spend their money to get it fixed, to improve the air quality. Why should I pay for it? There's a conflict between the two groups. It's very important to understand that you're not just protecting the environment. There is a conflict between two sets of people, two groups that's responsible for the environmental degradation. And you can see it in the air in Delhi that it's not just intergenerational. It's within the group of people living now. There are people whose consumption is high, and there are people whose consumption is low, who are poor or poorer. The higher consumption has cars and can sort of withstand the pollution because you can buy yourself air purifier, you have an air conditioned car in which you travel, you go to an air conditioned place, the air is cleaner for you. So it doesn't matter for you if your consumption degrades the environment. Yes, it matters, but not to the same extent as someone who cannot afford all of those air cleaning systems or devices or what you have. So it's a conflict right there between the higher consumption people and the lower consumption people. It's not the environment that we have to look at. We have to see who's creating the externality for whom. Who is playing the music that is hurting somebody else? Who is doing the consumption not of music but of goods and services that is hurting other people? If we frame the debate in this way, then maybe we can get people to understand better that the environment is not something abstract. That's not something that's out there. We have nothing to do with it. That's not the case. The case is that it's one group versus the other. And those who consume should pay the price for the degradation that they are creating. This, of course, the technical people understand this. It's called the polluter pays principle. But this is not how the discussion takes place in India. This is not the public narrative. The public narrative is we have to protect the environment. That's not the right message if you want the public to wake up. What you have to tell the public is if you're a consumer and you consume a lot, you are responsible for the degradation of the environment. Pay for it one way or the other. And if you don't, you are in working against those who cannot afford to consume the same levels as you. And if economists explain this better to the public, that it is about consumption. It's consumption that leads to degradation of the environment. Whatever form of consumption, but in the end, it is consumption. So that's my message to you. As our incomes rise in India, and they will rise to 2047, we have to be very clear that as the consumption levels rise, the production levels will rise, and the production levels will lead to environmental degradation unless the consumers pay for the likely degradation or to dispose of the waste properly. So that's the message. We cannot trust our politicians or politicians in most countries to do it. They are looking for votes. That's democracy, and I respect that. But we have to look after the long term. So that's it for today. I'll be back with another topic fairly soon. Bye till then.